Well, a YouTube channel named Don't Walk, Run Productions released a video last Friday before the debates talking about Andrew Yang and his philosophy on automation and especially how it's going to impact truck driving. Now, I did not like this video at all. I'm going to elaborate on why as I go through and watch it and give reaction in real time, give you viewers a chance to look at this also. To me, I felt like the narrator of this video was trying to be more of a smart ass than anything. But without further ado, let's just get into it, take a look, and you be your judge of your opinion on these issues.
This is Andrew Yang, a tech entrepreneur who is running for president for some reason. You may have heard Mr. Yang talk about how automation and technology is going to displace millions of workers.
My friends in Silicon Valley and my friends who work in technology know that what we did to the manufacturing workers, we are now going to do to the retail workers, the call center workers, the fast food workers, the truck drivers, and then even bookkeepers, accountants.
Okay, enough with the fear-mongering. So in this episode...
First point. Did you catch the really smart aleck comment at the very beginning? He's a tech entrepreneur who for some reason is running for president. So, let's be clear. What is your stance on this? That only a politician should be running for president? Oh, but our bad trade policies and all this outsourcing and all the problems that we face with the job market today, entrepreneurs, I guess you could say, may have caused it by actually taking their ball and chipping the job elsewhere. But it's the politicians who pass the laws. So who would understand what the root problem is and be able to come in and possibly fix bad trade policy and fix the job market better than someone who is an entrepreneur and understands how to make a product and how to promote the product and is a businessman? That is one reason why a lot of people thought Trump would be able to do such a good job with the jobs market. He was a business tycoon. Now, you could have the debate whether he was good at it, whether he was bad at it because of all the bankruptcies. Beside the point, people don't trust the politicians. So right off the bat, I can tell just how out of touch you are when you think it's a bad thing that if you're an entrepreneur, or if it's a stupid thing that you're an entrepreneur and you're running for president because it makes no sense. Clearly, you're already off on the wrong foot here.
Enough with the fear-mongering. So in this episode...
Fear-mongering. Making a prediction about how greedy businesses are going to try to use automation at every turn possible to cut back on actually having to pay flesh and bone workers because it's cheaper to use that robot than the people. And a presidential candidate who sees this on the horizon tells the American people, this is what you need to start preparing for. Here's my plan to help with it. And if there's any doubt that we're not going further and further down the rabbit hole of technology, look what they're trying to do with robots now with AI and everything, trying to make these things really think and respond like a human being. They're taking it too far. Okay? That's not fear-mongering, it's fact.
We're going to explore the question, are robot trucks going to steal millions of jobs from truck drivers?
Oh, really? Well, let's hear this.
So as Andrew Yang said, he has a lot of friends in Silicon Valley.
I am Asian, so I know a lot of doctors.
Sorry, wrong clip.
My friends in Silicon Valley are working on trucks that can drive themselves.
This guy is such a smarmy little smart ass, man. Good Lord. I'll be honest, when I first watched this video earlier, it was very insufferable for me. This guy's demeanor reeks of having an attitude. It's horrible.
They say that they're 98% of the way there, and these trucks will start hitting the highways in 5 to 10 years.
When his friends say that the trucks drive themselves, well, that's a bit of an oversell. For the foreseeable future, these robot trucks are only viable in two types of roles. The first is long-haul trucking, where freight is delivered over a distance of hundreds or even thousands of miles.
And what kind of trucking do you think most truck drivers do, genius? My dad was an over-the-road truck driver. I see truck drivers every day at my job. Yeah, sure, there are local drivers out there, but the majority of the trucking in this country is long-haul, over-the-road truck drivers. People driving from New York to Florida, South Carolina to California, Texas to Montana, Virginia to Arizona. That's where the majority of trucking's at in this country. So what are you about to tell us about these performance with over-the-road driving?
For example, this truck by Embark. First, the trailer is connected to the robot truck. Then a human being preps the truck and sends it on its way. The truck software can easily navigate long stretches of highway for hundreds of miles until it reaches its destination. And FYI, a driver is in the truck's cab at all times. As you can see, the truck software shines on highways where lanes are well marked and traffic is a lot more predictable. Where self-driving trucks...
So it's going to do the best on the job where most truck drivers are making their living. And yes, as things are set right now, there's someone in the cab. Andrew Yang is predicting this issue is 5 to 10 years down the road. So you have clear evidence that in 5 to 10 years, there's still going to be a point where a driver is going to be in the cab? Are you? You have that evidence? Well, let's see if you lay it out.
Do not work, however, are on city streets, where you can have thousands of pedestrians, bikes going the wrong way, streets with lanes that may or may not be marked, and other unpredictable conditions.
You mean the environment where there's more regular cars than 18-wheelers in the first place? Sure, 18-wheelers have to cut through big cities sometimes, but they are predominantly on the highway. That makes a lot of sense.
The second role for automated trucks are tailored solutions that are specifically designed for each individual customer. For example, Volvo has installed 6 automated trucks to carry limestone from a quarry to a crusher 4.5 kilometers away. Its route is a private road, which means excluding weather, the conditions of each trip will be exactly the same. Volvo also has autonomous vehicles working down at the docks in Gothenburg, Sweden. Volvo's Vera truck transports goods from a logistics center to a port terminal and operates on a predefined route, and in this case, partly on public roads. It's all controlled through a cloud-based service and management center. So while this might be replacing trucking jobs, it's creating new ones, i.e. people, to monitor and control the Vera fleet.
And so I assume that any of these truck drivers who are going to lose their job doing what this robot is replacing, these companies are going to say, well, you can't drive a truck anymore, but guess what? We'll make you a computer operator. Have you met many truck drivers? A lot of them are old-fashioned, blue-collar, typical, hard-working people. They are also not computer whizzes or computer geeks. In which case, they probably wouldn't want a job like that. But even if they were willing to take it to try to make ends meet and put bread on the table, I would bet you a year's salary that this company, whoever it may be that starts a process like this, would not say to those truck drivers, because we're taking this job away from you, how you feed your family, well, we're going to give you this computer job operating these trucks. And if you believe that, I feel sorry for you.
These vehicles are designed for short distance work in very specific circumstances, so you will never see one of these out on the highway, ever.
Being a trucker is the most
beautiful.
common job in 29 states. There are 3.5 million truck drivers in this country. 94% male, average age 49, average education high school or 1 year of college, a lot of them ex-military.
Now, while there are 3.5 million truckers in total, the ones that would be affected in the next 5 to 10 years would be heavy and tractor-trailer truck drivers that do long-haul work. And according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, in 2018, there were just under 2 million of them. So every time that he says that there are 3.5 million truck drivers that would be affected, it's misleading. Because there are
Oh, so 3.5 million would, that's the total number out there, but just under 2 million are going to be affected. So basically, you're saying it's misleading. You're saying that there's really nothing to worry about except over half of that total number are going to be impacted. Oh no. If I lost half my house, I wouldn't miss a damn thing. Are you kidding me? Really? Half of the trucking industry is going to be impacted, but what the hell are you worried about? There's nothing wrong here. Are you crazy? There's still going to be over 1.5 million left that won't be impacted. I don't know what you're so worried about. I mean, good God, man. It's less than half the industry, but it won't be impacted. Such a smarmy little smartass, man.
0.5 million short haul and local drivers that would likely not be affected. Like, say, UPS drivers. The
ain't that
truck
good
might be
news.
able to get to your house, but it won't be able to make an actual delivery.
Are we pretty confident that we're going to have robot trucks on the highway?
And who do you think makes more money? The UPS driver or the long haul truck driver? Because there's a lot of long haul truck drivers raking in $50,000 plus a year. UPS drivers may be getting close to that mark. But a lot of these over-the-road truck drivers, of course, E-Log has really screwed them up as well because back in the old days when there was paper logbooks, they used to, the old slang term for them was swindle sheets. Drivers used to run 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 was really pushing it, but I know at least a lot of them would run 2 to 3 different logbooks to try to fudge their time so they could keep on driving. Because the way it's set up, and I'm not an expert on all of it, but just talking to my dad over the years, I know drivers have a 14-hour clock. And with this E-Log process, say they're stuck at a dock for X amount of time, they literally can't move. Most long-haul drivers get paid by the mile, okay? They can't go anywhere. They're stuck. And if that 14-hour clock is going, it's just ticking away. That means that's less and less time they have to be able to move the longer they're stuck there. They can't stop it and go back and get in their sleeper and take a nap and take that off and add it back to their 14-hour clock either. Oh, no. Now, there may be loopholes out there, but just from talking to my dad, listening to a lot of the problems that he had, drivers used to fudge stuff like that. Let's say they were sitting at a dock for 2 hours. They'd get back there and take a 2-hour nap, and then they would, fudge the math on their driving time. Now, you might argue that it could cause sleep deprivation, encourage more drug use amongst truckers to try to stay awake, keep on moving. That's one thing. But again, these drivers get paid by the mile. And so when E-Log came around and they weren't able to fudge it anymore because the computer was keeping it by the book, well, that really started impacting how much money a lot of these drivers were able to bring home. But nonetheless, that's where most of these drivers are making their big money. The FedEx and the UPS drivers, while they may be making fairly good money, they're still not making that kind of money. Okay? And so if they don't get impacted by this, well, that's great. But you're telling me the one that really pays the most people and pays the best of the two, yeah, well, again, over half of those jobs are going to be impacted. Oh, but what are you worried about?
Highways in 5 to 10 years? Sure, they'll be on the road. I mean, they're on the road now. Like, they're actually testing robot trucks now. Are you going to have a robot truck maybe with a human there, like, twiddling their thumbs as, like, a quote-unquote fail-safe? Like, maybe.
To describe it that way is an oversimplification. And it really shows how Yang doesn't understand trucking as...
Really? Is it really an oversimplification? Because again, what you're basically implying, which again you have laid no fact out for whatsoever, is that once they perfect these trucks, There will always be someone in the cab. Yet you later went on, instead of giving me those facts to show how you expect that to happen 10 to 20 years down the line, you then went on to say that it is exactly those long haul, over the road truck drivers who will be impacted the most. So what you're trying to say is that because there's some on the road now, because Andrew Young just said some are on the road now, but in 5-10 years they'll be out there. Again, even if they are not perfected in the 5 to 10 years, if they're just starting to get out there, it's going to be like automation is now. Automation now, they have slipped the kiosks into the fast food restaurants, so on and so forth, and they are working and having a collaboration while you have kiosks and you have people. Do you really think it's going to stay that way? Of course not. Of course not. And why? Because they have to work the bugs out. They still need people to be there because of the problems they're running into with these computers. If the computer crashes, we need a person. And it is not until they completely work a bug out. Now, I do see some problems with this driverless truck at the end of the day. For example, again, how is the truck going to park itself and get fuel? Well, if you follow what a lot of the farther left wing is pushing for, it may not even be an issue, simply because these trucks may not even be running on diesel fuel. If they get their way, it's going to be all battery operated, which, in my opinion, if that's the case, you can expect a lot longer than possibly 5 to 10 years, because while they're working on one, a driver, like a battery operated car can't really go but 300 miles right now? Truck would need to go a lot farther than that, and you're talking about a lot more power to be able to pull that freight. So, I mean, you're really crippling how far these trucks can go. But they're working on this stuff. They're working on this stuff. And what Andrew Yang is talking about may not be in 5 to 10 years. When they really get this process worked out, it could be later on down the line, which is why he's trying to push for solutions to help the American worker when this big, as he calls the fourth industrial revolution, finally hits, when the wave finally hits, and it costs American workers like truck drivers their jobs, because these tech companies have finally found the way to cut the people out altogether. And once that happens, do you want to be trying to scramble around then and figure out how the people can be taken care of? How something can be done for these workers? Are you going to figure out once they've already lost their job? Or are you going to think about it once they've already lost their job? Or is it better to try to go ahead and come up with plans and solutions now because you see it on the horizon? So you make a game plan now. That way we're not caught with our pants down when the time comes.
At all. The job itself is much more complicated than just driving from point A to B.
And
For
I'm
example,
sure you
even
do.
if a truck can completely drive itself, robots don't exist that will be able to do things like connect a trailer to the rig, putting gas in the tank, and keeping refrigerated trailers fueled up and operational. What happens if a truck gets into an accident caused by another driver? What will the robot do if it strikes a pedestrian, whether or not the truck is at fault? And then there's...
Now, those are very good points, okay? However, they don't do it going down the road. They do it when they reach their point of arrival. So, when they recognize something is low on fuel, obviously the truck would start pulling itself off, and it would probably be just like old gas stations where there's someone there to refuel them. Okay? That's what's going to happen. Or, again, if they've eliminated diesel fuel altogether, they wouldn't even have to have a person there because they'd probably just park on a charging station of some sort. Charge themselves back up. These are the things that I see possibly, taking place. Now, what he's about to get to is, well, what if they wreck? Or so on and so forth.
stopping at way stations. How will the truck know which lane to go through? How will it know where to stop? Or which scale to step on? What if the load is overweight or oversized and has to be taken off the road? What if the robot truck is driving and there is a tornado warning? Will it know exactly where to park to keep the vehicle safe?
So, good point there. Would they stop? Would they not? Well, obviously, I would think that when they hit something, like, as I said the other day, I wouldn't want to be on an open road with one of these things. some sensor goes out and then cram, it runs over 10 cars, okay? Would it stop? Well, if the sensors have basically gone out on it, possibly not. Possibly not. Maybe, maybe it does just go completely nuts and crazy. But do you really think that that is going to have a big impact on whether or not they pursue this idea? Really? Well, if you do, then answer me this. Why did they already institute some self-driving cars earlier this year? And then, of course, a lot of these self-driving cars started having wrecks. I think it was either this year or last year. And then they started having wrecks. And I think one of them turned out to be like horribly bad. Like I think the car was like melded. It had such a bad crash. So if they're already doing it with cars and transportation in that department, you really think that even though there's that many detrimental aspects to doing this, they're not going to pursue it? Are you kidding me? And what makes you think that the government would? Okay, let's break this down step by step. I'll go in depth on this one here. Okay, so you don't think they're going to pursue it. So why do so many businesses deliberately break the law, and sometimes with the way they pollute and dump their waste illegally? To save a buck. They don't care what it does to the environment. They don't care what it does to the people. The only thing they care about is what it does to their wallet. That's all that matters. Okay? And if you think that the government would legislate against this, well, maybe they would, maybe they won't. But you got to figure, if there's enough money invested into this, and it takes off and it becomes a business like big oil, big tobacco, big pharma, whatever, you think there won't be people, unless we change how this system works, lobbying so that they don't legislate against this? They're going to be saving a lot of money. While granted, buying this equipment may cost a lot more, you got to look at this as a chess player and not a checker player. You don't look at how much does this piece of equipment cost, how much money is it going to save me over having to pay wages and benefits to an actual person to be driving this cab around. And how many jobs could we cut out that we don't need, like the truck stops, for example. They won't need nearly as, while they may have to add people out there to the fuel islands and so on and so forth, they could cut out the waiters, the waitresses. They won't need to run the restaurant. They just have to operate their fuel station. That's about it. I mean, the things they can cut out because they're not having to cater to any people if it reached that point. So if you think these corporations, these businesses, and the government are just not going to allow this to happen because they just have the best interests for the American people, my friend, you give way too much credit to the corrupt.
But yeah, human drivers don't have anything to do but twiddle their thumbs while the robots do all the work.
I spent a lot of time in Iowa, which is a really huge trucking hub. And you go to them and say, hey guys, you worried about robot trucks taking your jobs? They're like, there's no way a robot could take my job.
And yes, what he just said, there's a lot of people who are not concerned. And that is because there is some serious issues that are being posed. Again, for example, trucks refueling themselves, so on and so forth. Right now, they have not perfected any sort of system. But you also have to understand one thing. These truck drivers see the complexity of what they have to do on a daily basis, and they really, a lot of them, and I'm not saying this is an insult, but a lot of them are not, again, computer whizzes. A lot of them don't really know just what sort of AI exists out there. Don't really know just how much experiment they're doing with technology with the goal of eliminating the human from doing the work. They don't understand what's coming on the horizon. And maybe this won't happen. I pray it don't. I hope that this smartass in this video is completely correct, that these truckers don't have to worry about losing their jobs because it would hurt them. Unfortunately, I've paid attention to the world around me. I've seen what greedy corporations will do. And they don't care about the people. They care about their profits. And if they can make profit by getting this thing through and making a system where they don't have to pay American workers to do this, well, guess what they're going to do? They're going to get rid of the American worker. Even if it takes 20 years to perfect, it'll be worth it for them.
Not something that they worry about. Their attitude has transitioned from that somewhat.
Probably because you keep insisting to them that they're going to lose their jobs and face economic uncertainty.
And you know what? Is it a bad thing when someone can see the potential problems on the horizon to say something? Is it really that bad thing? You act like all he's doing is fear-mongering, okay, and trying to hurt the American people and make them afraid for themselves. You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of the way that Al Gore and many others basically called Ross Perot a kook and a nut back in 1992 for saying that NAFTA would be disastrous for the American people. It would be bad trade policy and it would cost a lot of jobs. And everyone, a lot of people on the right, Al Gore was obviously the vice president after the election with the Democrats, and he and Al Gore had a debate on Larry King Live. Again, this was a concept drawn up by a Republican, implemented by a Democrat. Both sides were saying, you're wrong, this is going to work wonderfully. And of course, we lost millions of jobs.
What's their next economic alternative going to be when the robot trucks come? It's a rhetorical question. Nobody knows.
Although Yang has mused about what might happen as a result of truckers losing those jobs.
Dozens of truckers recently protested in Indianapolis. They did something called a slow roll, which they had a bunch of trucks, and then they just started driving their trucks slowly on the highway. Gums up traffic. They were protesting the electronic monitoring of their driving time.
If you look at the footage of the slow roll in Indianapolis, it was a very peaceful protest and not exactly gumming up traffic.
How do you think they're going to react when it's a robot truck that's actually taking the job away? I'm going to suggest they're not going to take that well.
But instead of offering a solution or just...
And I could very well see that being the point. If you met some of these truckers, especially down in here in the South, a lot of these guys are old bad boys that don't really give a damn. And if something like this comes along and tries to take the way they make their living away from them, you might see an uprising. And personally, I would be cheering them on.
Just coming to a logical conclusion, Yang is preparing for the worst.
Because we should obviously just pretend that these issues don't exist and just think everything is going to be sunshine and rainbows and that these corporations are, again, just going to kiss the truck driver's ass up one side and down the other, that there's really no problem at all and we shouldn't worry about anything. That sounds like a brilliant plan.
We need to implement a plan for how we handle the loss of these jobs, and we have to do it soon. Some estimates have the mass production of these vehicles as occurring within the decade. This has potential for serious unrest if not handled properly.
Anyone who thinks that truck drivers are just going to shrug and be like, all right, I guess I had a good run, I'm just going to go home and figure it out. That's not going to be their response. It's going to be much more likely that they say, you need to make these robot trucks illegal, or they're just going to park their trucks across the highway, get their guns out, because a lot of these guys are ex-military, and just be like, hey, like, I'm not moving my truck until, I get my job back. And there'll be a lot of truckers in the same situation.
And check out this tweet where Yang tries to connect the Odessa shooter losing his job as a truck driver to people losing their jobs because of a robot truck takeover, implying that there could be thousands of similar incidents. Yang's dystopian narrative...
And there very well could be. You don't understand, I guess, I don't know where this smart aleck is from, but speaking from a southern state in a small town, rednecks are crazy. You attack their family, you attack their way of life, and I'm not saying all truckers are rednecks, just the general point, a lot of truckers around here would not consider themselves city boys or, as some people call them, yuppies. They'd identify as a redneck. Probably got a gun safe at home. You come after their way of life, how they provide for their family, the way they make their living, and the way they make their money after years of sitting in a truck, taking toll on their health because they're having a lack of physical activity, wearing their knees out because they don't get to use them on a regular basis, wearing their back out because they're stuck sitting in a chair, bad on their heart because they don't get any cardio, eating truck stop food, Not necessarily the most healthy thing in the world. Pissing in bottles because they don't want to stop at a truck stop. And they've spent years doing this to make money, to provide for their families. And you take that money away from them and hurt them after all these years. You think these people are going to take it laying down, son. You've got another thing coming. You really do.
It is very troubling, to say the least. And while he's the only presidential candidate talking about how the robot trucks could affect the economy, he doesn't seem to have a solution. All Andrew Yang is saying here is that he's planning to have a plan. That's not a plan.
So the trucks.
The universal basic income may not help pay for everything they would lose from truck driving, but if they did have to place some other job as a result of this problem on the horizon that's coming, having that universal basic income would at least possibly add to possibly a lower paying job where they could make ends meet. It may not be what some people would call perfect for these workers, but I would consider it a plan. Certainly better than anything I've heard you suggest in this video.
Are really bad at something called snow. They rely upon the road markings, and if snow covers the road markings, then the computer's not sure what to do.
The computer is also not capable of chaining up tires in snowy conditions, but that's a whole other issue.
The truck is going to...
And that is why not all people will be eliminated. Obviously, there will have to be people, either at the trucking hubs, weigh stations, or whatever, to put these chains on the tires, hook up the airlines, refuel, roll up the landing gear, roll down the landing gear, so on and so forth. There will have to be people, but you can still cut back on how many you have.
Signal a teleoperator sitting in a warehouse in Nevada. So the teleoperator beams into the truck and then can see out the front of the truck like it's a video game because the trucks have cameras in the front.
But what if the snow covers the cameras? And what if there are tens of thousands?
And you don't think that in the way that technology is coming along, they wouldn't have a process to possibly build a thermal lens or heater, perhaps, so that these cameras can't get completely just covered up in snow? Or even possibly build little bitty, if they make the camera not necessarily just this little round device, but if they're able to mount it inside of the cab so it can look out the windshield, therefore keeping it so that the elements can't get to it. You have the windshield wipers keeping the windshield clean. They could just look straight out the windshield, perhaps. I mean, really, man? You're not putting much brain power into this, are you?
Thousands of trucks on the road that are affected by the snow. That means you'll need tens of thousands of remote operators monitoring those trucks. And wouldn't those operators be twiddling?
And again, I'm sure they're just going to give these jobs to the truck drivers who would lose their jobs, right? No. This is, again, the problem with where I say there's going to be jobs tomorrow, and it will all be more computer related. But these truck drivers will meet the same detrimental end that cotton mill workers met, which is they're going to be told by these new jobs, you're not qualified enough to do them. Move on.
Their thumbs in between snowstorms?
So they beam in, they take control of the truck, and then the computer says, okay, I'm confident again, you can leave, and then they beam back out.
And if it's so easy to beam in and out of these trucks, that means that they could be vulnerable to hackers who either want to steal a truck or just take it for a joyride. And the same goes for the rig itself.
Same argument could be made for these self-driving cars they've been promoting. Have they put a pause on that? No. Of course not. Again, you got a valid point, but if you think it's going to make a difference in whether or not they pursue this idea, wishful thinking.
Someone could forcibly stop a truck and steal expensive parts. So companies might not be on board with the idea of shipping hundreds of thousands of dollars in freight unaccompanied, as they could be targets of theft. Otherwise, every day could look like a scene out of the Fast and the Furious. What is likely to happen, strictly for reasons of safety, is that the Department of Transportation will add rules that will require a human operator to be in local control of semi-autonomous trucks under their care. This would include truck platooning, which is when one truck remotely controls a second truck directly behind it. Also, state and local governments could pass legislation that outright ban unmanned robot trucks from populated and heavily trafficked roads, either for safety issues or to protect jobs in local economies.
And perhaps they will, and if they do, I support it. However, I add this once again. Once you add all this extra technology to these vehicles, you're going to find there are a lot of old school truckers you're just basically going to kick out of a job because they're not going to be able to operate all this high-tech crap. Or they're just simply not going to want to. There's probably going to be a lot of extra training involved in this. You're going to wean them out. And again, I wouldn't even hold my breath they do pass this legislation because I've got a feeling the people dumping all the money into investing into this stuff are going to be just like the other lobbyists who keep the government on their side so they can get their product on the market and make money for themselves, and they just pay the government off to have their interests in mind when they pass these laws or refuse to pass laws.
Or both, it's not out of the question. But then again, I could be wrong about all this. I mean, I'm no trucking expert like Andrew Yang.
I am Asian, so I know a lot of truckers.
So what about you? Do you know a lot of doctors? I mean...
You're exactly right. You're not a trucking expert. Neither am I. But speaking from someone who has had family members in the trucking industry, you're really not intelligent on this subject at all, period. I haven't watched any of these other videos this guy has made, but on this subject, he sounds about as much of an ass clown as the people on Capitol Hill did when they were trying to ask tech questions to Mark Zuckerberg. Those old ancient dinosaurs who had not one clue what they were talking about. While this guy has raised certain points, he has also shown just what ignorance he has on thinking, oh, that's fair mongering, blah, blah, blah. He's basically shown he thinks the philosophy is do nothing, and then if the problem ever arises, we need to scramble and deal with it after it's already kicked everyone in the face and cost plenty of people their jobs. That's when we should start worrying about it. We shouldn't plan to prepare for the issue. No. If someone announced that we were going to have a nuclear warhead hitting this country, we shouldn't prepare to try to take it down. We should wait till it makes impact and then try to just find somewhere to hide. That's the smartest solution.
Do you think that the robot trucks are going to take over the trucking industry? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, thanks for watching, sharing, and hitting that like button. And as a reminder, the official Don't Walk Run Productions Discord server is up and running. And if you're a Patreon or YouTube channel member, you get a special Discord.
And I did none of the above. I guess you could call this a share, but if anything, I gave my review in a video, not in your comment box. And I really don't think you have any business trying to promote a message to the American public that they have no reason to worry about the automation of jobs. And might I add, you make out like Andrew Yang is such a kook when he talks about this automation, yet I noticed you only focused on the trucking column, and that's far from the only one Andrew Yang has talked about. He's mentioned the call centers. He's mentioned the manufacturing, the office jobs, fast food. You got an argument for why we don't need to worry about that either? So again, what you said was that over half the trucking industry, just to review, could be impacted by this. Right at 2 million could be impacted, but 1.5 million won't. So 500,000 more would be impacted than as opposed to who wouldn't be impacted. And again, most of those who would be impacted are the people who are really making the most money through this. And that would be the over-the-road long-haul truck drivers. Okay? And if you're going to throw in the UPS drivers and all that with the, local drivers, that's probably where you're getting that extra 1.5 million that won't be impacted. I think if you just compare people who drive an actual, 18-wheeler locally, I don't think there's that many of them that can stack up against the long haul. While there is definitely a lot, long haul is the predominant, driving force of the trucking industry. So again, to break down, you think that there's nothing to worry about in that column. 2 million may be impacted, but 1.5 million won't be. So they have no reason to worry about. And as far as the rest of this crazy kook's point about automation, when he talks about the fast food and the manufacturing and all this and that and all these other industries that automation's coming along in, the call centers, the office jobs, CVS, so on and so forth. Well, I'm not going to address any of those. I'm just going to give you the point in this video talking about one of his subjects on automation that he has no clue what he's talking about. He's a moron. He's an idiot. You don't need to worry. And then in 10 years, you'll still have your job. Okay. I would think you would try to break down each one step by step. But basically what this guy tried to do was run Andrew Yang through the mud and say he has not one clue whatsoever what he's talking about. But at the same time, I'm only going to focus on one of his subjects and try to dismantle it, and I'm going to do a piss poor job at that. So I'm curious what you all think about this. If you've watched all the way through the video, leave your comments below on what you think could be happening with the trucking industry. But me personally, one, I think this guy was a smarmy smartass. Okay, I just think he had a really, really, really smart aleck tone through this whole thing that is posing a threat to a lot of hardworking people out there. And I don't think that's an appropriate tone to have when you're taking a subject like this. I don't care if he's trying to be clever for a YouTube video or whatever. I don't agree with it. I thought it was very distasteful. But drop your comments below on what you think. And if you agree, I'd like to hear from you. If you don't agree, I would like to hear your point of view on this also. And we hope you tune in next time. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Independent Report. If you liked the video, please give us a thumbs up and like the video. Also, if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to ask or topics you'd like us to cover, please drop a comment in the comment box below. And also, please subscribe to the channel. And if you do subscribe, ring that bell so you'll stay up to date when we drop new videos and you'll get notifications of it. And also, please support us on Patreon. Funds are going to be used to grow and improve this channel so we can reach more and more people and spread the message that the mainstream media doesn't want to tell people. We hope you'll tune in next time.